Okay, just in case everyone thought that I was joking, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the first of hopefully many CUCSA chats, and this is centered on finding your voice through staff assembly. And I want to give a little quick background as far as what prompted this. We know there are a lot of different people that are interested in staff assembly, and that there are a lot of different aspects to what that experience is. And so we thought that on a system level, it would be good to have some shared conversations with different members of CUCSA, both past, present, and future. And so we thought that this would be a good chance to begin those conversations. And this first one is based off of the experience of finding your voice. So before we jump into it, I did want to start with just a brief acknowledgement. This can be a little bit clunky because we're system-wide, but I did want to take a moment just to recognize and acknowledge that the work of the University of California takes place on unceded tribal land, and that we are very grateful to the communities across the state that continue to contribute to California. And we'll think some more about ways that we can improve our work as an organization to build better understanding about what that means. So that being said, let's go ahead and do some quick introductions. I know we've all had a chance to be on Zoom quite a lot the last few years, so we probably don't need to talk too much about this, but as a reminder, this is a Zoom room, but Zoom fatigue is real. If you need to be off camera, not a problem. I will add as well that this is recorded. It will be going on our different social media, which you can check out right there. And when it comes to questions and answers, please feel free to type them into chat. Before we get started too much, I also wanted to introduce myself. My name is Dennis McIver. Pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am the chair of the Council of UC Staff Assemblies. I have 6, moving in on 7 years of service. Feels like it's been quite a ride up to that point, but I'm grateful for every moment. My experience, in addition to being chair of CUCSA, is I am a past president of UC Riverside Staff Assembly, past chair of UC Riverside's Black Faculty and Staff Association, and also a co-founder of the Black Leadership Alliance Council at the University of California, aka Black at UC. And so one of the things I want to mention is one big benefit of being in staff assembly is the friendships that you're allowed to make. And so I'm deeply thankful for the friendships that I've been able to develop with each of the panelists you'll be talking with today. And I would say, if anything, besides the change and the great things you can do, the friendships you make it well worth it. So let's go ahead and introduce everyone. Starting with Alvin Shaw from UC Merced, who has been a part of UC Merced's community since 2007, when he first came as a first-generation student. He has more than 8 years of experience with UC Merced and currently is an assistant director in the Gallo School. He also has been very involved in staff assembly, and that culminated with a term as president, which recently concluded. And I know he's grateful to get some time to breathe. But a fun fact about Alvin is that he's actually named after the famous singing chipmunk, but he's saying that's about all he inherited from being that little critter. So hello, Alvin. Thank you for joining us. Up next is Derek DeMarco from UC Santa Cruz. He's currently the department manager for the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at UC Santa Cruz. He has 9 years of service. For about 6 years, he's been very involved between his local staff advisory board as well as the Council of UC Staff Assemblies. He recently completed his term as the operations officer for CUCSA. And a fun fact about Derek is that he does musical theater, and he's actually been in more than 30 shows. And in fact, he met his wife on stage. So welcome to Derek. And up next, this is one of many treats. This is Priya Lakareddy, who serves as the current UC staff advisor to the Regents, but she's also serves as the assistant regional director of UC Merced's Office of Research and Economic Development. She has 8 years of service. Much of her leadership relates to UC Merced Staff Assembly, which culminated in a term as president. And as a tribute to all of the great work she did, she was actually named a 2021 Kevin McCauley Memorial Outstanding Staff Award recipient. And a fun fact about Priya is that she enjoys watching movies and listening to music with her 3 teen children. Let's say that again, 3 teen children, as well as her husband. And so we're very thankful to have you here as well. And then last and certainly not least would be Julie Salgado, who serves currently as the Director of Events for Staff Assembly, but don't let that fool you because she has a very long and distinguished service record here in the UC. She has more than 24 years of service, and in the next couple of days, she will hit the magic number of 25. Her term in local service includes a presidency of UCR Staff Assembly. She's also a past chair of UCR's Leaders of Excellence and Distinction, or LEAD. She is a 2020 Kevin McCauley Memorial Outstanding Staff Award recipient as well. She currently serves as the events manager for UCR's College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. And a fun fact about Julie is that she actually adopted 2 children during COVID. And I've been very fortunate to see all the cool pictures along the way. And because she couldn't get enough of Staff Assembly after all of her years of service, she came back last year and she continues to contribute in lots of different ways. So welcome to our panelists, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. So at this point, we have created a series of questions, and the goal is for this to be a conversation. So if you do have questions that you'd like to pose, please feel free to private message me in chat and we'll be sure to bring them in. But we really want this to be a shared discussion. So let's go ahead and start a little bit. And we're going to ask this of all of the different presenters. Can you please provide a brief description of how and why you joined Staff Assembly, as well as your experience with finding your voice before getting involved? So why did you join Staff Assembly? Tell us about your experience of finding your voice before. And I'm going to start with Alvin.
I was worried you were going to start with but thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So finding my voice to me still feels like a continuous learning curve. I don't think I don't claim to be an expert or somebody who can just go into a room and just speak my mind. I am very, very much an introvert. And so it's like, to me, it's like a language. So if you don't use it, you tend to lose it. And so if I sit back too long and I'm not talking or I'm not engaged, then I tend to have a little bit of a concern speaking up. And so that's why I continuously challenge myself and I put myself in an uncomfortable area. I get out of my comfort zone so that I can talk to folks. I think this is where Staff Assembly actually comes into the picture, because Staff Assembly provided me with the opportunity to actually get out of my comfort zone, speak to senior leadership, talk to the chancellor, talk to a variety of folks that I normally would not do so. And so that has been kind of the biggest push for me.
Great, thanks so much, Alvin. And next, I'm going to ask Derek to step up.
Thanks, Dennis. Happy to be here. Good to see so many familiar and friendly faces. Yeah, I have always felt drawn to being involved and being of service to different communities that I've been a part of. And when I joined the UC, that was still the case. And so I got involved in my local staff assembly. We call it our staff advisory board at Santa Cruz. And for me, the process of developing my voice has been kind of a combination of trying to emulate folks that I am impressed with, folks that I hear being articulate and measured and persuasive and successful, and trying to avoid falling into the pitfalls of folks that are maybe too abrasive or offensive, not good at building community and consensus. Want to figure out how to learn from all the folks I'm around, and just try and do the best I can.
And you do great, Derek, by the way. Okay, Julie, what do you say?
Hi, everyone. I would say I started Staff Assembly similar to Derek, where I joined a committee. I did that for about 15 years on the social committee, doing the events, and I absolutely loved it. Kind of think it put me into this event career path for me. And then I finally got asked, hey, do you want to be part of the board? And I said, no, I'm too shy, I'm too quiet. And then Andy Plumley chose someone else. And then he asked me one more time because that person had to step down. And I said, yes. So then I was on the board. I loved it. And then because I did such a great job on this one event, Robert Wilfer, a lot of you know him. He said, hey, you need to be vice president. And I said, yes, again. And I was terrified. And then, so like Alvin, I was an introvert until staff assembly found my voice. And then, yeah, my first general meeting, I remember the room being filled with like 400 people and being up there having to speak in front of 400 people. That I was terrified, but I did it and I loved it. Yeah. So I think staff assembly has really carved out that path for me as far as being able to speak in front of people, and then as well as my event career path.
Great. Thanks so much, Julie. Okay, Priya, you're up.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And it's great to see so many familiar faces, and nice to meet all of the ones who I've not met before. So a little bit of background about myself. I moved from India when I was 18, and I just, when you move at such, it was a very interesting age. I'd left a lot of my friends behind, and I came, and since I moved to this country, I would say I was trying to find that sense of belonging, and it always, for me, came through organizations that I was part of. So when I was in St. Louis, I was part of the Indian Association, and I was vice president there. And then I got married, had children, and so I stopped working. So after taking an 8.5 year break, I came back into the workforce. I started at UC Merced, and I literally was opening doors for people to come in to the building. I was a blank assistant too, I think that was my title. And so my job, I was kind of lonely because I would just sit there, right? 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, I would just let people in. I was just kind of lonely. And then one day, this email came about, there's a staff assembly meeting. And so I went there and I was like, wow, this is cool. I feel like if I join here, maybe I'll be able to make a few friends, because I did not know anybody. I do not have a higher ed background. So just being from a mother and transitioning into work. So just started there and joined a committee to plan a staff assembly picnic, and really found my voice there. And, I've always been curious. Even when I was little, I would ask questions, why? If my mom asked me to do something and didn't ask my brothers, I'd be like, why are you only asking me? So I think I've always had this nature in me to ask questions. So I started asking questions in meetings, and I'm like, well, I think my voice is. Then, when you ask a question, you see other people nodding their head and say, I support her. So it's kind of from there, it took off. And then I said, oh, now I can have a bigger impact if I join staff assembly. And as extroverted as I am, I'm also very terrified of public speaking. So being part of staff assembly leadership, and it's actually a goal of mine, a professional goal of mine all the time, to become a good public speaker, because we all have great ideas. But for me, sometimes I just stumble and have a hard time articulating it. So joining staff assembly, being in meetings with leadership, really, and you have to be to the point and convey your message and have the question. So those are the ways I kind of found my voice in staff assembly.
Great, thanks so much, Priya. Okay, so this next question is going to be for Derek and Julie. And the question is, describe your initial experiences using your voice when you started on staff assembly. And I'm going to ask Derek to start this time.
Thanks, Dennis. So when I first joined the staff advisory board at Santa Cruz, I remember very vividly the kind of narrative that folks would talk about to new folks was, oh, just for your first year, just kind of learn the ropes, just kind of watch, just kind of listen, and just kind of, you don't have to worry about doing anything. And that felt bad, because one of the reasons what I joined, and a pretty deeply held value for me, is that the reason to get involved and the reason to be engaged is because I'm trying to fix the things that are frustrating, right? I am driven to do a lot of these things because I see that things could be better, and oftentimes for not very good reasons are they the way that they are. And if I'm gonna let myself be frustrated with the things that I'm being frustrated by, I also have to step up and be part of making things better. That's my belief, my perspective. And so showing up and being told to just kind of sit and wait didn't go well. But it was a great exercise to learn how to navigate that difference, and to say, no, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I can contribute. and having those conversations both, individually with folks that were on the board and in the larger group, and figuring out a way that I could contribute sooner. And so that was kind of my first experiences.
And with me, it was my year as president, it was the survey results, the engagement survey results came out that year. So we were told, and in previous years, the results came out, but there wasn't really any action. It's just, here's the results. This is what's going on. I hope we do better next time. So during my year and my vice president, Ross French, we really took everything and we're like, okay, how can we make a difference? How can we make sure that our numbers increase? So that year I sat with the HR, the Crow at the time. We co-chaired the staff engagement, the chancellor staff engagement work group, and we put a work group together. We worked on it for several months, put a timeline together, and we gave them some deliverables. This is our recommendations on how to increase our numbers with the staff engagement. In 2 years, our numbers better be up in these 3 areas. And it was change management, performance management, and career development. And we did see that the senior leaders, we have very supportive senior leaders. They took what we had, our recommendations, they took it to their retreat, and they really came back and were like, okay, we need to do this for our staff. And I think that was the time when I'm like, okay, they're listening. We're the voice of our staff, and if they want something fixed, they're going to listen to us. So, and I think that was a key moment for UCR staff.
Great, thank you both. And let's go ahead over to our next question, and we're going to move over to Alvin and then Priya. And so the question is, describe the first time in staff assembly that you felt you were heard.
So I guess I'll start for them, Priya. With our staff assembly at UC Merced, because we are such a smaller institution compared to our sister campuses, I've always felt heard. I think because we can talk to each other, we pass by one another so frequently that in this type of setting, I've always felt heard. And again, I think that's to an advantage because it was easier to just communicate with one another. I think I knew I was being heard when a lot more random staff were coming up to me and saying hi, or they knew my name and they were talking to me, and I had not had the opportunity to meet them yet. And so I think that's when I felt like I was actually being heard. And so I'll also add that when senior leadership or the chancellor knows your name and they can call upon you, that's when you've been, you are being heard and you're doing your job.
The first time, I think what I vividly remember is it was my first time on the board, even though I volunteered for a committee, like first time on the board. And at the end of the year, we were having a luncheon with our Chancellor Leland at the time. And we were all giving our suggestions and how to make things better. And when I made a suggestion, and she said, tell me more about that. So then it kind of like made me think, okay, so what we're saying is being heard. And actually her questions or follow-up questions were thoughtful. So that was my really first time I felt like, oh, my voice is being heard and what we're saying is valuable. So if you have questions, you have opportunity, always make a suggestion and see where it goes from there. It could be valuable. We all have great suggestions. Sometimes we're afraid to share it. And whatever it is, the way I did it, it's like it was a question followed by a suggestion. Like, I think if we did it this way, and she's like, oh yeah, I like that. So that's what I remember.
And I think one piece I quickly add to just sort of a meta thought is that for those of you who haven't participated as benevolent at these organizations, there are very few things that kind of give that validation more than when a staff member comes up and says, thank you for doing that work. Sometimes it feels like, oh, well, hey, there's this leader and they're there, we're here. And that's not necessarily the case. A lot of times we thrive off of that feedback. So if you have a leader that you see, don't be afraid to say hello and thanks. I think it really helps just in terms of having that dialogue, because ultimately we're here to serve staff. So just wanted to throw that in. So the next question that we have is, each of you have served as leaders of your respective organizations. Can you describe how sitting in that role as chair or as president has really helped you to develop your voice? And I will start, in this case, we'll start with Derek.
Thanks, Dennis. I think that the first thing that I had to learn was how to acknowledge when I didn't know something or when I had made a misstep, to just own it. I think that by nature, we all feel that it is not an option to look like you don't know something when you're in a leadership role. And I was fortunate, I came up in higher ed through residential education and living and supervising with RAs and students. And a supervisor of mine was really grounded in the theory of the social discipline window kind of framework. And long story short, there's a box that's the with box. You want to work in the with box. You want to do things with people. You don't have to do things to people. You don't have to do things for people. In leadership, I want to do things with people. And so if I can come to a discussion and say, I don't know what's happening, or I don't know what the right answer is, that can lead to the conversation of brainstorming and figuring out how we can move forward together and with each other, and in a way that isn't intuitive. At least it wasn't for me.
And that could be tricky too, because there's such a used to having to know the answers, and it's being able to be almost Socratic in that way and say, you know what, I'm not sure, but let me take ownership of this and try to find it. So very important point. Alvin, what do you think?
I agree. I'll first share that I was very lucky to have some very, very great presidents before me, who had shown great leadership. Priya Lakkareddy being one of the individuals. During my time, before I was vice president, you know, I had the opportunity to kind of watch and shadow and see how they interacted with senior leadership, the way that they spoke to staff, the way that they would just, you know, provide the information and resources so well. And so I would watch them and learn from them. And I think when I became president, I pulled a little bit of all of that into the way I would want to be a leader and utilize that format during my year as president. And so in interacting with individuals, I kind of pulled from what Priya and Yesenia would do, and, you know, utilize some of the leadership skills from previous presidents that I had the opportunity to interact with as well. And I think that was what helped me further develop my voice. And again, I'll also toss in there that your voice has power, and that being president, I think it really helped amplify my own voice.
As someone watching from another campus, I co-sign on to that. So let's go ahead over to our next question. And this one will be for Julie and Priya. And I think one challenge that we sometimes face, to the point just raised, is how do you speak truth to power, especially when it comes to talking to senior leaders? And I think we've all had those kinds of moments. And I was hoping, Julie, Priya, if you could describe your first experience of engaging a senior leader in this way.
You make it sound like I don't.
Dennis, that reminds me when my first year as president, I sat with the chancellor and associate chancellor, so Chancellor Kim and Christine, and they were talking about the like, what are the staff feeling as far as being able to develop and go to trainings and having release time. And I was just being honest, so being transparent and honest and saying, you know, that there's a lot of managers and supervisors out there that do not allow their staff to leave their office to go to trainings and develop. And they just were like, really? And so I think being able to say the truth, but also to be respectful, of course, but just letting them know, because sometimes they just don't know. So and being able to let them know what's going on with staff, like you said, staff will come up to you and just say things that they don't feel comfortable saying to their own supervisors because of retaliation or whatever. But if we're able to do that for them without naming names or anything like that, but I think just being that advocate, being the conduit, the person that can connect the dots is awesome.
Yeah, my experience is very similar, like Julie's, when this whole idea that you can't go to a staff assembly meeting or you're not given permission by your supervisor, doesn't sit well with me, didn't sit well with me. So what we did is intentionally, I moved the meeting. We used to meet at lunchtime, and I feel like lunchtime is very sacred. Everybody should have their lunchtime. So we moved the meeting from lunchtime to like 10 o'clock in the morning and made sure our chancellor sent a letter, like an email to everyone saying, this is really like a professional development opportunity for staff and you should encourage your staff to attend. We did increase, it's hard to get participation, but I think it did, doing that did increase our participation. But I do remember when the staff engagement results came out, I said, I want to present to senior leadership because I think it was like the Crow and our chief diversity officer were presenting it. And I kind of like inserted myself into that group who presented it to senior leadership. And I remember, because I don't know how many of you have looked at the staff engagement survey results. UC Merced is always on the lower end of how staff feel. And I was presenting this data to senior leadership. And then the questions that they were asking were kind of, like, really, is that what you're thinking, right? They were like, well, which department? Tell me what is, like, maybe it's not my department, maybe it's another department. I was like, no, I think it's really what I told them was, it's really, what you should really be focusing on, not who is saying, but what they are saying. And it's consistent. And there's a reason why we don't reveal to anyone where this information is coming from, because if that is not protected, then people won't give their honest feedback. So it was really it was very eye-opening to me that everybody thinks it's not their, some senior leadership think it's not their problem, it's someone else's, but it's reminding them that culture starts at the top, and what they do and how they react to things will really inform culture on campus. So I reminded them, it's all our responsibility, particularly senior leadership, to step up and say, we need to make things better. So you just have to say it. It was in a closed session, so I was able to say it, but again, asking those questions out loud so others can also hear that you're asking these questions to senior leadership, right? I also want staff to know that yes, it's not just in closed settings, this is happening in open settings also. And usually I know that it's working because I get a lot of private text messages or chats saying, thank you for asking that question. So that's how you know we're asking the right question.
I, for one, especially in the virtual space, I love the Zoom nod where you're watching. Sometimes there's the delay, so you don't know if it's actually resonating, but then it happens, you go, okay, folks are feeling what I'm saying. This is good. I would be remiss, and I've made a mistake. I need to invite Derek to also speak on this because I've seen this. So I'd love to get, Derek, your take on that last question.
Thanks, Dennis. I must have misread the list. I thought I was going to answer this question, and so I had thought about it or wanted to give a really great answer, and so I wanted to just share. For me, I think that where I have found success at doing this is trying to really dig down to the simplest question that I can ask that dominoes into the next one, right? And so kind of related to this last year's CUCSA work is we would meet quarterly with President Drake, and one of the things that we would discuss is exit surveys. Dennis knows I'm going to get up on the exit survey box. I think that there should be a comprehensive, consistent, transparent process. Everyone knows they're going to get to share their experience with the university that they're leaving, so that the university can ostensibly do something with that data and make the experience for people who are staying better. And in the casual conversations throughout the year, it was always, oh, we can't do that. UCOP doesn't get to dictate to the chancellors how things are going to run on each individual location, right? That was always the response, when it was always, the system needs to really get involved and set some standards. And Marie would say that, and Julianne would say that. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. They're not doing anything wrong. They're doing what they're expected to do. But that just means when we go into the meeting with the president, I want to ask, President Drake, I've heard people say that the office of the president doesn't get to tell the chancellors how to do things. How can that be true? I watched UC Path roll out. Nobody volunteered for that. He's like, oh yeah, we get to tell them what to do. It's like, great. So now we can have the next conversation about why isn't that the priority, right? Why isn't this thing that we feel is important? Where do we go from there? How do we get that to be the place that you get to say that, yeah, we have some values that aren't being lived up to. And so here's how we're going to change that.
And having seen those discussions, Derek did not let up. This was like a constant thing, and it was really a pleasure to watch and see where the conversation went. So I will personally validate and say that that is absolutely what happened. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. And a few of us have alluded to this, and it was about introversion. And I think that there's a pretty large population of staff who still are feeling that level of introversion, and it can be a bit of a challenge when it comes to engaging as a result. And I know that we had a couple of introverts, and I was hoping that we could talk about how did you navigate using your voice while being introverted? And I can share at the end, but I want to just ask all of you, who's introverted and how did you truly navigate that while being a leader in staff assembly?
So I guess I'll go first since I did say I was an introvert. Yeah, I am absolutely an introvert, but I think as time has passed, I feel like I've become more of an ambivert where I can then transition into more of an extrovert if I needed to engage folks and talk to folks. I'll admit, after leaving these types of events, I am completely drained and exhausted, and all I want to do is hide in my hole and not talk to anybody for a little while. But it is a challenge. I think one of the things that I think back on is back to my days in my junior year of college where I decided I wanted to study abroad. And that would get me out of my comfort zone. It would take me out of my little room, and I can get out there and meet new people and engage in things. But as the time came closer to the start of the program, I remember being at SFO, getting ready to board the plane when reality hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to leave the country. I don't know anybody. Nobody's going with me. I don't know the language. What the heck am I doing? But my feet kept walking. And I got on the plane, I sat down, and I have never regretted that decision in my life. And the fact that I could do that means that I can do anything else. And so as I continue to progress through staff assembly, I think back to that time of me being, a junior in college, going out of country, not knowing anything, to doing this. And I was like, I can do this. This is a piece of cake. Not that I still wouldn't leave. And, Priya knows we would have side conversation, and I would say, what was I doing? What was I saying? Tell me. But, I think that's how I navigated it. Was I continued to think back about a challenging time and comparing that to what is happening, what I'm trying to do now, and seeing how minimal that seems, or what I'm doing now, how minimal that is compared to what I had done in the past. And so that continues to motivate me and to get me going. And then I can just think back and laugh and actually, become more of an ambivert than being an introvert. And so I think that's what I did, and that's how I navigated the experience.
Inspirational. Thanks so much, Alvin. Julie, I got to pick on you a little bit today. What do you think?
So when I going back to that one first meeting with the speaking in public, I found out that I love having friends like Dennis and Ross French, who are awesome writers. So I know for me, I have to have it written down. I have to read it. I have to be able to practice it a lot of times. I can't just talk off the cuff. I'm not that person. So I know for now, if I have to present in front of people, I have to have it written down to read it, to get what I want to say across. Because what we have to say, all you introverts, what you have to say is very important, and it needs to be heard. So whatever you have to do to get that out, do it. You have support. I know if I had to run from that meeting because I couldn't do it anymore, I know Dennis would take over and be able to get what I needed to say out. So if you have a couple of folks you can really lean on and have and practice with, do that. I think I'm an extrovert in an introvert shell, and like I said, staff assembly cracked that shell and got me out there. I get my energy from people. I love being around people. I love to be engaged. So yeah, I really get a hold of those couple of writers that can write for you and kind of speak. They know if I'm going to say something, hey girl, they know, they're like, okay, you're not going to say hey girl to the provost. You're not doing that here. So make sure you read it by someone that you can trust.
That might be a new challenge that I give for you locally, but we'll see where it goes. Derek, Priya, what do you think? Derek, you can start.
I don't know that I really count as an introvert when I voluntarily get up on stage and sing to people. So I'll let other folks speak up.
Okay, Priya, what would you add then?
No, like I said, although I'm an extrovert, public speaking was not a strong suit of mine. So developing that, thinking, like Julie was saying, just writing down sometimes helps, and just write down your random thoughts and have that piece of paper. I remember when the president search town hall happened at UC Merced, I was like, oh, I'm just going to go say things. I'm like, no, I'm going to write it down. And I wrote everything down and I read it and I said what I wanted to say. I went over my 3 minutes, but I still said it. So sometimes writing down helps. I was like, the little like beep went out, and then I looked at Ansha and I'm like, can I keep going? And I didn't even like let her say yes or no. I just kept going and they didn't stop me. So writing helps, practicing helps. Sometimes I do practice in front of a mirror, especially before I have to go to an interview. And for my staff advisor interview, I did practice the questions in front of the mirror. It helps.
And I would add 2 quick points to this. Talking before the regents is truly one of the best trials you can get. And I've seen Priya do this repeatedly the last year. And if you want a real quick experience real fast, doing that or a public comment, that'll get you from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. The other point I'd add to is that if the opportunity presents itself, I think it's a good chance as leaders of these organizations to find those folks who are introverted and give that validation to them and say, your voice does matter. We hope you feel empowered to do it, because sometimes I know for me as an introvert, that's sometimes the challenge, because there's constantly that internal dialogue happening about, well, what if I'm wrong? What if no one agrees? And it's being able to find those folks that are more introverted and say, no, what you have to say does have value here, and I hope you feel comfortable doing so. I think that's a really important piece too as leaders to do. So I did want to throw that in. The next question I have, it sort of dovetails with the earlier question. And so this will be for Derek and Alvin. And it is, when was the first time that you realized your voice had an impact on your campus? And so that's slightly different from being heard, but in terms of when you said something, how did you see that impact? What was the first experience you can provide for that? And Derek, I'll have you start.
Dang it, Dennis. I feel like this is a little bit, I want to say it's cheating. Again, my path to where I currently am came up through student affairs. And so I worked with RAs, I trained RAs and taught a leadership class. And so it feels a little like cheating to say that like that's where it starts having impact. But I was in a position to really start making a difference in student leaders from the beginning. My first job was out of grad school was at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. And it's a Catholic school. And I was probably the most liberal person on campus. And so being able to help student leaders question some of the things that they were taking for granted was very apparent very quickly. And even though I am no longer the most liberal person on the Santa Cruz campus, that's a pretty tall bar to clear. There were students that come into my office and think that they had everything sorted out and they knew the answers to any particular issue that they were getting worked up about. And I think the important thing is to lean into the Socratic method and just start asking those questions. And one of my first RAs in California kind of got to echo and parrot things back to me by the time we were done working together. She's like, yeah, I know everything is more complicated than I want it to be. And that's just true. And so getting people to sit with nuance and wrestle with it is important.
So I don't know if so this isn't the first time, but this is the most memorable, most recent memory that I can recall. And it really is that when I realized my voice, and I'll even add the voices of previous staff assembly presidents had an impact, was when I got a call from our chancellor a few days before his State of the University address. And he called to share that he was committing $1 million to our staff assembly for transformative programming, recognizing the importance of staff development and supporting staff advocacy. And that was when I realized, okay, yeah, we've made a difference. We've gone out there, we've said what we need to say, we continue to advocate for staff. And again, it's a continuous effort. It's from one president to the next, but we continue to share our voice and make it really announce that we are advocating for staff and we want staff wellness to be a top priority here. And for the chancellor to call personally before his State of the University address to share this information, I think that was when I realized, yes, our voice has power, our voice has an impact.
And that was very well received by not just the folks at Merced, but also system-wide, because it really provided validation to a long line of distinguished leadership at Merced. And it just, sometimes that's another point of voice. Sometimes you may be the first to say it, and it may take a few people to get it past the finish line. And even at Riverside, we had the same example where we were trying to get a statement to encourage staff participation in activities. And it took 3 years between multiple presidents to keep just working towards it, but eventually it got past the finish line. But that was a really cool example. So thanks so much for sharing it. And this question is for everyone. And Priya, we're going to start with you this time. So the question is, a big perk of staff assembly is the professional growth that you receive through it. Can you describe how developing your voice through staff assembly has manifested in your professional career?
So one of the things, I'm an individual contributor, right? And when you're an individual contributor, it's hard to show your leadership. And what I've learned over the last 6 years is when you become part of staff assembly or any organization, any staff affinity groups or other outside groups, when you start doing this work, when you join a board, really helps to think differently. And it shows your leadership. So you can actually, now you have things that you can put on your resume and say, this is what I started with, and this is where I ended up, and these are the things that I achieved, or I helped be a part of change. And so it's overall, it contributes to your professional growth, whatever it is. So, I mean, would I have ever thought of applying for staff advisor if I didn't do staff assembly? Absolutely not. So it helped me get to that next step, that next level, and helped me believe that, yes, I could be a leader, with whether or not I have a leadership title, that I could be a leader. And it's a great way to show growth and actually put things on my resume that people can notice. So it's a very brief answer.
Brief but good. Julie, what do you say?
But I started out as I think Priya or someone brought up an AA2 back in the day. So I was actually, before that, was senior clerk. If anyone's been here long enough, there was a senior clerk and then an AA2 and 3, and I just kept promoting. And then when I got to the events, I was special events and tours manager, and doing events with staff assembly. It definitely has contributed to my advancement as far as now director of events has put me on the map as far as being the director of events for CHAZ, and also being able to, I'm part of the UC Women's Initiative coming up in January. So a lot of the leadership skills, like Priya mentioned, I can put those on my resume. Being in charge or being the leader for a volunteer group I think is harder than those that get paid for their work. So being able to use those skills, the leadership skills I've developed over the years through staff assembly, has really put me in my career trajectory and where I want to be and retire at UCR. So I definitely have a lot to thank staff assembly for.
Cool. Thanks, Julie. Derek, you're next.
Priya and Julie have said so much that's so accurate. I would just reinforce the notion of kind of leading volunteers is a challenge. You don't have positional authority. You don't have the ability to do corrective action based on something that the university has empowered you with. You just have to build consensus or figure out how to work around it. And so that's certainly a skill set that has value that you don't find until you're in a voluntary organization. So that has been helpful.
Great. Last but not least, Alvin, go for it.
I will absolutely say that I am where I'm at today because of what I've learned in staff assembly. I joined because I was not given an opportunity to handle finances. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to staff assembly. I'm going to run for finance officer and I'm going to oversee a very small budget, but it gives me the experience to oversee budget. And so I did that. And then people were like, okay, you need to run for vice president. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. But it really is, I think what I really want to share and what I really gained out of it really is the network. Yes, I learned a lot, but I also was able to meet a lot of people. I know who to contact. I know who to reach out to. I know this person in this department. So if something's broken, I know to reach out to them. And so there is a lot of professional growth there, but there's even more networking opportunity. And to me, I think that's what staff assembly has really, provided me, because I'll just say it, and I know it's it's recorded. I didn't get here I would not be here if I had not joined staff assembly, because during my interview, I referenced this department and I knew this person, and I can say I worked with this individual and I've done this because of staff assembly and the work that I did with staff assembly.
Co-sign on all of that. Okay, so then we have two more questions. And by the way, if anyone has questions to toss in, please feel free to add them to chat. But another enjoyable part of staff assembly is helping that next generation of leaders step up. And for Julie and Priya, did you have any experience in helping others find their voice that you're willing to share? And Julie, you can start.
I'll start with my vice president back then was Ross French, and I saw something in him that I knew he's going to be a great leader. So I did approach him. He took some time to think about it. He did. He said yes, and yeah, it was. I think I was one of our best years getting staff assembly back to where it needed to be, where it was going, the trajectory of where it's taken and where you've taken it, Dennis, Crystal, everyone after me and Ross, and him, and then there's a young career staff that I've taken under my wing, and I've seen her come along. So if you've taken the DISC assessment, I'm a I, which is influence, and I can, it's my superpower to get people to do things, and it could be crazy things. But I really enjoy seeing her grow. So yes, that's a very enjoyable part of being staff assembly is like Alvin said, the network. You know a lot of people and you can help them grow through what they want to do. You can point them to different things, different development opportunities. So definitely, if you haven't mentored anyone, take that opportunity to mentor somebody or to coach. But it's a great opportunity for you and for them.
I reach out to people all the time. I'm like, staff assembly is great. You should join it. And also I encourage people to like apply for jobs and interview for those jobs. So I know like Austin is on this call, and I hope that I had influenced Austin to run for staff assembly, and I hope I had influenced Alvin. You should ask them if I influenced them or not.
Very much so, Priya, very much.
Yeah, I'm very good at like picking up the phone and like talking, and I'll talk and talk, and then I'm like, by the way, you should do this too. So yes, the only way we're gonna create a strong pipeline is to encourage people. Sometimes you need that nudge. You need that, and it shows to the people that we're reaching out to that they're being viewed in that way, right? That somebody else is seeing that I have leadership quality. So it feels good when somebody reaches out to you And I'd hope that we left a positive impact by the things we did, not only what we said, but how we do things, people see and learn. So I think we've, the next generation we've influenced. So I hope others continue on this journey. And I would encourage anybody who wants to apply for staff advisor to do so and reach out to me. And I would be more than happy to share my experience and help anyone.
And I'm going to add 2 quick points. Number one, Priya, we're going to talk about that later on because I got ideas, but I want to go back a couple of years to 2019, which feels like it's a lifetime ago. And I was doing an event at Riverside and someone walked up and said, "Hey, have you ever considered being president? And have you thought about taking this on?" And someone had mentioned it once, but I wasn't sure. But that person, the first time they mentioned it, I started taking it seriously. And that person was Julie. So I think that it's important to recognize that validation, that encouragement, that no, I see the potential in you, it can sometimes manifest in a lot of different ways. So for those of you who are leading it, don't underestimate the power of your voice to help people in seeing something in themselves that they may not have seen up to that point. So we've gotten to the last question, and this is for everyone. We will start with Derek this time because I only get so many more chances to ask for his help. But this is the advice section. And so do you have any advice that you can share for those on a board or considering joining a board when it comes to finding your voice? Any advice that you may have? Derek, you start.
Boy, I sure don't know about advice giving. I think one of the hardest things for me is remembering that disagreeing with an idea is different than being against a person, right? Ideas and people are different. And so in this volunteer work, when we think about setting priorities and think about how to strategize and what path we should go down to achieve what we think is most important, you're going to have people disagree with you. And that can lead to really healthy conversations. Conflict can be healthy, and really figuring out how to do that well makes everything easier. And so that would be a place that I have focused on in my journey, in kind of the leadership theory work that I've done, conflict with civility, how to disagree about something, but still be for the person, if not for their idea. So that's a place where I think most of us would do well to focus on. And I think that our organizations and dare I say the world would be better off for us being better at that activity.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Derek. Okay, Julie, you're next.
I would say if you're hesitant, first be part of a committee, test it out, see how you like it. And then if you're good at it, we will ask you to be on the board. That's how we do things at UCR. If you're good, you definitely will be asked to be part of the board or another committee. And also, like Derek said, volunteers. This is a volunteer organization. Be nice to your volunteers. I know Ross French's mother said she worked for she did the Rose Parade, and she said, don't yell at volunteers. Don't be mean to volunteers. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. And like all of us, we have our day jobs, and then this is extra to help UCR be better, help all your different campuses be better. And this is a way to start. So be part of a committee. If you like it, continue being part. If you want more, run for a board member, and then eventually president, and then work Dennis's CUCSA chair. Yes, and Priya as star. Those are awesome roles. If you want to give more and make change really happen, do something. Don't just sit there. Do something about it.
That's great, Julie. Thank you. And Priya, you can go next, please.
Yeah, I would say, sometimes you think you're the only person who thinks like that, and joining organizations, you will meet like-minded people, and you will meet people with similar lived experiences, and maybe somebody who's different, and then you learn, and it helps you grow. So whether it's within a staff assembly or an affinity group or an outside group, you just get to learn so much. And when you go to these places, in the beginning, just listen more than speak, because when you listen, you take so much in and it gives you good perspective. But overall, I think it shows growth, and you'll see as you grow in these positions, you'll see you've learned so much. And reflecting back, I've learned so much. I'm a very different person from what I started 8 years ago in higher ed. Never been a part of higher ed. I was a commuter student, never lived on a campus. So I wish I could be a student now. I wish I could be an undergrad student now and experience all these wonderful things and amazing things that staff do and help with sense of belonging for students. So that's being part of these organizations, a sense of belonging for me. And I hope it will get sense of belonging for you too. And going about this volunteer thing, and I think we all have to advocate for some sort of compensation. And that's what we did with the STAR program. It took a meeting with the vice president at business at UCLA. Just mentioned to him that staff advisors do not get paid. Student regents get their tuition paid, and the faculty get like a per diem for 2 years. They don't have to do their work. And then when we told him that, staff advisors have to do this and also do their regular job, and we don't get any help. So now we're getting compensated for it. So staff assembly, ask for it. If you don't ask, people will not give it to you. So make it a point of constantly bringing up in conversation with your leadership. It's a lot of work. So, but you can do it.
Yes, you can. And the last word is for Alvin. Go for it.
So on the note of you can do it, I think what I would say is stop doubting yourself, because most of the time we find ourselves, or at least I found myself saying, I don't know if I can do that, or I don't know if I can, if that'll work for me. And it wasn't until one of my mentors actually pointed it out and said, well, why are you saying that again? Like, you haven't even tried it. And that's when I realized, you're right. I need to quit self-doubting myself, and really challenge yourself, right? Get out of your comfort zone and try something new. You may not like it, but at least you tried it. Or you may find that you really do love it and it becomes, a new passion for you. And so I would say definitely stop doubting yourself and challenge yourself. And then finally, I'll also add that staff assembly is what you make of it. And so again, as mentioned, we're all volunteers. And so whatever you want to put into it, the time that you put into it is what staff assembly becomes. And so that is my last comment.
Okay, and on that note, I want to just take a moment to thank Julie, Alvin, Derek, and Priya. I've had a chance to do this for a few years, and the biggest thing I've gained from this experience are the friendships I've made. And I consider this panel to all be friends that I continue to learn things from. And now that I'm chair, you're not going to get away from me that easily, but I'm just so grateful that y'all are willing to take this on. But I'm also grateful for everything that y'all continue to do and what you'll keep on doing. So appreciate y'all giving an hour to have this talk. And at this point, let's just talk quickly about the next couple of chats. So I'm going to do a quick share screen if they let me. Okay, great. So for the next chats we're going to have on August 30th, we're going to have one on fundraising. You'll get a link on that later on. And then on September 14th, there's going to be a town hall on what CUCSA is up to for the year. So we hope you'll participate in both. All of that will be made available on our social media, and we'll ensure that it gets to your local staff assemblies as well. So just keep an eye out for that. And if you've enjoyed this, here is our social media link, linktree.com/CUCSA, or they're there. And if you want to, please feel free to complete this survey right here, just to tell us how things went. And overall, though, thank you for giving an hour to this. This will be available on recording if you want to share with other folks. But really, thank you for giving us an hour to have this discussion, and it'll be the first of more to come. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day, and keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you.